Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we're going beyond the usual news cycle. We're taking a closer look at the Iranian resistance movement. Specifically, how, a new generation of activists seems to be stepping up and really shaping its future.
That's right.
Our main source material, it centers on the recent FreeIran2025 conference, and we're drawing insights from the testimony of one participant, Aref Nouri. He's a young former student, recently exiled from Iran.
A very direct perspective.
Exactly. So our mission here is to get a quick but deep understanding of the political plan, the global organization this youth movement is building. Think of it as your shortcut to being genuinely informed on what's happening.
And it's crucial to grasp the scale here first. This wasn't just some small meeting. The main session was in Paris, but at the same time, you had linked events happening in Germany, the UK, Switzerland.
Wow, so coordinated.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And the who is key. Young political activists, students, specialists, coming together from 5 continents. That signals a very deliberate global effort, not just a local protest.
And Aref Nouri, the voice we're focusing on, he provides that vital link, right, to the reality inside Iran.
Definitely.
He was a metallurgy student expelled from Karaj University by the regime, and he's only been in Europe for, less than 5 years?
That's correct. So he gets the sacrifices happening back home, but he's also navigating the international side of things now.
Makes sense.
So let's dive into the why. According to participants like Aref, the main goal of the conference was actually pretty straightforward.
Which was?
To create a truly unified voice for the younger Iranian generation, bridging that gap between those inside Iran and those who are now outside. And this group, the youth, they're consistently pointed to by the movement as the absolute core pillar for what comes next.
And the political principle defining that pillar. What's the banner they're marching under?
Well, the sources are very clear on this. It's a total rejection of dictatorship, any kind of dictatorship. It's summed up in that slogan, neither Shah nor mullahs.
Ne Shah, ne Sheikh. We hear that often.
Exactly. And they're pushing for one specific alternative, a democratic republic of Iran.
That phrase, neither Shah nor mullahs, it's quite effective, isn't it, politically?
Oh, extremely.
Yeah.
Because it shuts down any attempt, by the regime or maybe others to paint the opposition as just wanting to bring back the monarchy.
Right. It draws a clear line.
It plants the flag firmly in the camp of modern democracy, not dynastic rule.
Okay, so that's the vision. What about the structure, the how?
Yeah.
Who is this youth movement actually supporting to make this democratic republic happen?
The source material points to explicit support for 2 interconnected groups.
Go on.
Yes, there's the external political wing, the People's Mujahideen Organization of Iran. You probably know them as PMOI or MEK.
Right.
And then there's the internal network, the activists on the ground, known as the resistance units, or Kanun-e-Shurashi.
And the key insight is how they're linked.
Precisely. The conference attendees, according to our source, see these not as separate things, but as 2 sides of the same coin, part of one single organized resistance strategy.
Okay, that makes sense. And that leads us nicely into the strategy itself, because this conference sounded less like a protest rally and more like a planning session.
Very much so.
The talks were structured around 4 specific themes, or axes, as they called them. They laid out the steps needed. What do these axes tell us?
They show a really detailed sense of priority. Axis 1, the determining role of youth. Seems obvious, maybe, but the emphasis is strategic.
How so?
They're not just bodies in the street. They're framed as the main engine of change. They were the driving force in those big uprisings we've seen recently.
We should probably clarify those dates for listeners because they use the Persian calendar. The source mentions 96, 98, and especially 401.
Yes.
That last one, 401, that corresponds to the massive nationwide protests in 2022, right?
Exactly right. It's a way of tracking this continuous, escalating wave of youth resistance.
Got it. So what was Axis 2?
Unity inside and out. This builds directly on the first point.
Yeah.
They're separated geographically, but the shared goal is overthrowing the dictatorship.
Makes sense.
But what's really interesting here is the specific job given to the youth outside Iran.
Which is?
Their task is to be the voice of the resistance units who are operating inside.
Ah, like a communicative shield, almost.
You could put it that way, yeah. If the global youth are speaking out, raising awareness, lobbying governments...
It makes it much harder for the regime to just disappear or violently crush the activists inside without consequences.
Exactly. It becomes politically costly for the regime. It's a kind of risk management.
Clever. Okay, Axis 3.
the democratic alternative. This is vital, particularly for, international perception.
To show they're not just about tearing down, but building something.
Precisely. It proves they're not aiming for chaos. They have a vision. And this is where the attendees consistently backed Mrs. Rahabi's 10-point plan.
Right, we hear about that plan often.
And it outlines those key principles: freedom, separating religion and state, gender equality, ending the death penalty, free elections.
It's essentially a ready-made constitutional framework.
Yes, designed to show they've thought beyond just day one of a potential transition.
And the final axis, axis 4.
Hope and motivation. This might sound softer, but it's strategically crucial.
The emotional core.
Right. The conference acted as a powerful reminder that the struggle, despite the immense pain, is alive and kicking. People shared incredibly personal stories: prison, torture, forced exile.
Wow.
But they juxtaposed that suffering with this unwavering belief that change is possible, that it's coming. That level of personal sacrifice, it really underscores the movement's commitment.
It's powerful stuff.
So once they had these principles and strategies laid out, the next step was getting the message out. The resistance seemed to focus on 3 main target audiences. Think of it like ripples spreading out from Paris.
Okay, who was the innermost circle? The first target.
First, and maybe most importantly, the youth inside Iran.
Right.
The message to them was crystal clear. You are not alone. Imagine the psychological boost, the feeling of unity, seeing thousands of young Iranians gathering globally while you're facing daily repression back home.
Yeah, that'd be huge. Okay, audience number 2.
The international community. Holding this major event right in the heart of Europe wasn't accidental. It was a demand.
A demand for what?
That the world stop basically its policy of appeasement and finally stand with the Iranian people, not the regime. The location itself screamed, the time for appeasement is over.
A bold statement. And the third audience?
The regime itself. This was a direct, organized warning.
Saying what?
That this generation, the current generation, simply will not give up. They even reinforce this idea of intergenerational struggle by quoting a very respected resistance figure, Sardar Kelk Musa Kibani.
Ah, tell us about that quote.
It's about the flag of resistance, saying even if it falls from one hand, it will immediately be picked up by another.
So continuity.
Exactly. Invoking Kibani, who's a foundational figure, through the voices of young activists, sends a powerful signal. This movement isn't about individuals. It's a continuous historical force that keeps renewing itself. Very strategic messaging.
And what gives all this messaging real weight is the external reaction, right? This wasn't just them talking to themselves. It got significant media attention.
Huge point, yes. Major international outlets covered it. Reuters, Associated Press, EU Reporter, Express London.
And that matters because...
Because it confirms the narrative is shifting. The media picked up on the key themes. Reuters specifically noted the youth, stressing they are the determining force in rebuilding Iran. And AP highlighted the young participants loudly backing both the internal resistance units and the 10-point plan. It shows the global media is starting to see the coherence and seriousness here.
So when you tie that external validation back to the internal situation, it seems to fuel this belief among participants that the balance of power is actually shifting. Why do they feel so confident about that now?
It seems to be a mix of their own strategy working and the regime's own failures becoming more obvious.
Okay.
On the resistance side, you've got this mobilized youth generation, plus the organization from the resistance units that turns, raw anger during uprisings into directed action.
Structure matters.
Immensely. And then you look at the regime side.
And the cracks are showing.
Big time. The sources point to crippling internal weaknesses, rampant corruption, the economy collapsing, political infighting, and just constant brutal repression.
But the repression isn't working as intended.
It seems to have backfired spectacularly. It's actually increased the resistance's popularity, according to the source material.
And there's proof of that.
Well, here's maybe the most critical piece of evidence cited. The regime's own judiciary admitted something stunning.
What was that?
They admitted that around 90,000 people arrested during those 2022 the 401 protests, 90,000 of them were young people, even students.
90,000 from the regime itself.
From the regime's own judiciary. It's undeniable proof, really, that the youth are leading this and are the regime's primary target.
And arresting that many young people just reinforces the resistance narrative, surely.
You'd think so. It also seems the public is getting maybe savvier. The sources mentioned declining trust in what they called fake or puppet alternatives, alternative egalibi.
Meaning alternatives without real grassroots support.
Exactly. Alternatives that seem propped up by media or external forces, but lack that deep organizational structure and, frankly, the visible commitment shown by the resistance units.
So authenticity matters.
It seems to. When people see sustained, organized effort, especially led by young people who are clearly paying a heavy price, it shifts who they trust. The moral authority moves.
I want to circle back to that commitment, because the logistics you mentioned earlier are fascinating. This wasn't just a quick rally. It was an 8-hour professional conference.
Right. Quite an undertaking.
And there was that detail about an open Q&A where young people could directly question Mrs. Ravi.
Yes, apparently completely unscripted.
That suggests a certain level of confidence, doesn't it?
It really does.
Yeah.
Confidence in their platform, a desire for transparency. But, of course, organizing something on that scale immediately raises the money question.
Right. How do they fund it, especially with the regime constantly saying they're backed by foreign powers?
Well, the sources tackle that directly. They claim complete financial autonomy.
Which is the big claim.
It is. They state they rely only on voluntary contributions from supporters, both inside and outside Iran. They explicitly deny getting funds from, the U.S., Russia, Israel, anyone the regime points fingers at.
Okay, so if it's voluntary contributions, how does that translate into the actual logistics? Because that level of organization costs money.
This is where the commitment becomes operational, not just financial. Financial independence is one thing. It means they answer only to their members. But the how is volunteers. They handle everything. We're talking catering, building stages, printing banners, even driving supplies across Europe in their own cars.
Wow, all volunteer labor.
All volunteer. It dramatically cuts costs, obviously.
But it also does something else, right? It reinforces that collective spirit.
Exactly. The quality and professionalism achieved through dedication, not just paid contractors, sends a powerful message about the seriousness and perseverance of their core supporters. It's quite remarkable, actually.
And that seriousness really came through in the specialized panels they held, didn't it? It wasn't just about protest.
Not at all. This showed deep planning for a post-regime Iran. Experts were tackling critical, long-term national issues.
Like what specifically?
Well, there were panels on the psychological state of the Iranian people. The trauma after decades of repression and planning for healing.
Important, but heavy stuff.
Definitely. They also addressed the brain drain, the migration of elites began, and how to potentially reverse that or retain talent. And crucially, they looked at the future of energy, specifically clean and renewable energy.
And they had specific data on that.
They did. One expert highlighted a really damning statistic. Iran gets about 360 sunny days a year.
Incredible solar potential.
Yet solar power accounts for less than 1% of the country's energy needs currently. It's a stark example of the current regime's mismanagement and infrastructural failure.
Paints a clear picture.
Absolutely. And this wasn't just academic discussion. It was about commitment. Young doctors, engineers, other professionals there apparently pledged to dedicate their skills to serving the Iranian people once freedom is achieved.
So it's not theoretical opposition. It's like nation building and waiting.
That's a good way to put it. They're actively planning the what next.
So if we try to boil down Mrs. Rahavi's main messages from her address during the conference, what were the key takeaways she emphasized?
Two things really stood out, according to the source. First, an explicit statement that the future of Iran is, without question, in the hands of this young generation.
Placing the responsibility and the power squarely on them.
Yes. And second, that the equality of women and men isn't, a side issue or something to deal with later. It's fundamental, essential to the whole struggle against the misogynistic regime. It defines the kind of democratic future they're fighting for.
Okay, so putting it all together, what's a final picture from this deep dive? What did the FreeIran2025 conference really show us?
I think it showed a resistance movement that's very much active, highly organized, and intensely focused on the future.
Right.
By putting the youth front and center as the engine, and by laying out such a detailed blueprint for transition, they effectively countered the regime's narrative that the opposition is old, tired, or lacks a viable plan.
It sounds like they presented a compelling case. So here's a final thought to leave you with. When you consider the sheer depth of that professional planning, we discuss panels on everything from national psychological trauma to detailed clean energy strategies. It goes way beyond simple protest, doesn't it?
Far beyond.
What does that level of comprehensive technical preparation actually imply about the timeline and the scope of change the resistance movement believes it's preparing for? It suggests they're not just hoping for change someday, maybe far off. They seem to be actively planning right now for a transition they perhaps see as much closer than many might think.